Judaism, Israelis, Jews never disassociated from their homeland. So no matter where we were, there was always a connection to the homeland.
Israel is the most contested piece of land in world history. This small sliver of earth has been fought over for thousands of years through many wars. Today, there is still a war being waged, though not with bullets, but with words, in an attempt to delegitimize the state of Israel.
They face really an enemy of misinformation. Misinformation that is intentionally designed in an anti-Semitic way to delegitimize Israel.
Before we take a look at the so-called New War, first, a little background. In 70 AD, Jerusalem was ravaged by the Roman Empire, led by Emperor Titus, leaving the Jews without a home for almost 2,000 years, causing them to scatter among the earth and ultimately leaving them without a homeland.
For almost 2,000 years, Jews were scattered across the earth. After the fall of Jerusalem and the fall of Masada, there was really no homeland for the Jews. And it was for the first time in 2,000 years they didn't have their homeland. They were scattered to the ends of the earth.
For centuries upon centuries, the Jewish people were wanderers, vagabonds in other countries, having to live under the ostracism and persecution of the other countries they occupied.
Well, basically, a people without a homeland. Meaning not only a homeland, you don't have a government, you don't have a representative. And since the Jews were always a minority, so they lived under the auspices of whatever government or whatever authority that they were under. And because they were a minority, in many cases they were persecuted. The whole idea of the state of Israel is to allow us to have a representative that is also, to a certain extent, responsible.
The late 1800s was, in many cases, the beginning of the rebuilding of Israel.
In the late 1800s, Theodor Herzl began the Zionist movement, which was a calling of Jews back to the ancestral homeland, to come back to ancient Israel, to reestablish, to live here, and to fulfill the biblical prophecies, to make the desert bloom, and to cause the dry bones to live again.
It was a political, economic movement that says we need to start the process of bringing Jesus back. So the modern political movement called Zionism is probably the first stage in returning the Jews to their homeland.
Theodor Herzl and the Zionist movement was just the first of a few key steps to rebuilding Israel as a state. After World War I, the Balfour Declaration of 1917 brought the Jews one step closer to obtaining their homeland once more. But even after the Balfour Agreement, Israel's homeland continued to evade its people.
There was a lot of sympathy for the Jewish people to have their own state throughout the world. So much so that in 1917, the Balfour Agreement, which was first adopted after World War I, would be given the opportunity for Jews to return to the homeland. The partition was set up, and this was at the time when a lot of the various partitioning of the Middle East was happening, the creation of Transjordan, of Syria, of Lebanon. People forget that 100 years ago these places didn't exist. They were partitioned by the British. So one of the lands that was supposed to be partitioned was the nation of Israel. And the other nations were in fact established, but there was a delay on Israel. It turned out to be disastrous because with the Holocaust, instead of the Jews having a homeland to escape to, they were chased throughout Europe, and 6 million of them were murdered by Hitler in the Holocaust.
Because of the horrors of the Holocaust, there was an outcry for the Jews to finally have a homeland.
For lack of a better word, this third stage would have been probably the Holocaust in World War II, when we realized the need, and everything that happened after that in 1948, the War of Independence, the League of Nations, or the United Nations actually voting to give the Jews a homeland, all of that actually came together to give us what we see today.
After the Holocaust, again, the world said maybe the Jews should have their own land. And so in 1947, the United Nations voted that there would be a Jewish homeland, a Jewish state. It was officially established in May of 1948.
The Jews finally had a place to call their own. though it wasn't long before it came under attack again, except this time the Jews had the means to fight back.
When the Jews came back to their homeland, basically the Arabs living here did not want to accept the Jews. So it's been a running battle ever since the late 1800s. 1892, 1893, there were already massacres. It's been a running battle. The pitched, settled, in the trenches battles were 1948, War of Independence, 1967, Six-Day War, and 1973 were the Yom Kippur War, which were the three major battles between Israel and its neighbors.
After gaining their independence in 1948 and fighting two more wars in 1967 and 1973 against neighboring Arab countries, Israel finally had a full control over their homeland. But now, Israel faces less of a battle of lead and artillery and more of a war of false information.
Israel faces a lot of enemies, not just the enemies that surround them militarily, whether it's Syria or Lebanon or whether it's Hamas in Gaza. They face really an enemy of misinformation. Misinformation that is intentionally designed in an anti-Semitic way to delegitimize Israel.
And there's this movement that says Israel as a state is a colonial faction, means Europeans have come to the Middle East and taken up a piece of the Middle East. Probably somebody would say similar to South Africa, for instance, if you want to get a little bit of that history, and that our place is not here, and there's no recognition and no connection to the years of history that the Jewish people actually have in this place, or to the historical, religious, biblical connection that Israel has to this. And if you take that out of the equation, okay, you see Jews or Israelis as colonials, and that's the spin that's being put on it.
Israel will continue to face these sorts of political battles in the future. Though they have tried to make peace with its surrounding neighbors, the reply is always the same. No compromise, no negotiation, no peace. There is a saying in Israel, there will only be peace here when Israel's enemies love their children more than they hate the Jews.
It starts off with Abraham and a promise that was made to Abraham and his descendants. As far as I understand, the promise was not conditional. I mean, the Bible did not put any conditions. And ever since then, we've made a lot of mistakes. We've come, we're up and down. But we have been a people on a land for the last 3,500 years. All we want is a place to call home.
Americans should understand that there's no country on earth that more accurately mirrors who we are as a country in terms of our origin, our reasons for being, and the way in which we carry out our government and our culture.
I think it's amazing that after 2,000 years, we've managed to pull this off. That we've managed not only to return, but to build a viable, thriving, Western-style democracy that believes in freedom and believes in democracy. I mean, there's never been an example like that in history. And, well, I guess among other people, me and many other people would see this as a miracle. So that's what makes this place so amazing. And I will say, I'm not objective. I'm in love with this country.